G'day, hi, and welcome. So you weren't ready for that, were you? No, you weren't. I know you weren't. You were like, something's wrong with my computer. Reg froze. All right. Anyway, yeah. All right. So I got the video for you. Just something that you people need to know. This is the most important part of the video. I'm halfway through, guys. So it's coming along. Uh, Starting to get. It's not an unpredictable book. The story's okay. I'm liking it. But Saturday, I'm going to go and see if I can pick up some more books and hopefully maybe get my Christmas shopping done in the thrift store. That would be awesome. I don't think I'll be that lucky, but I can wish, right? Because it's kind of hard. It's gonna be a hard Christmas for a lot of people, no matter where they are in the world. The Black Christmas is definitely upon us. Just the chaos and the madness of it all. But I wanted to talk about Venezuela a bit. I'm still doing a little bit of research on Argentina to see, exactly what the policy is there and stuff like that, and what it could mean for us down the roads. Like what can we learn from Argentina, who's collapsed like 9 times in the last past century, and probably about 3 times in the last past 50 years, right? Uh, but I wanted to focus on like the Trump administration and what's going on with Venezuela because there's more than beneath the eye. It's never about democracy and women and children. Oh, we're just overthrowing this dictator and drug cartels. And that's the stuff that the goy slop, so to speak, that they throw out there for you. You know what I mean? No, it's something a little bit more sinister than that and terrifying. So all you 51st stater people, they're like, that want to, like Maple Magas and stuff like that. You need to understand that no, you do not want to become a part of the United States, especially not now, because if you understand what's behind the scenes of what's going on in Venezuela, which is actually kind of a strange anomaly because there's a failed start going on here. The war isn't kicking off. They had to respond to Venezuela too quickly, so they weren't able to get the people to hate the Venezuelans enough to, like they did, say like in Iraq and Libya and stuff like. Oh, he's a dictator. Yeah, Muammar Gaddafi was a dictator. Saddam was a dictator. You know, a dictator that was brought into power in 1948 by the United States, right? Um, but the thing is that what people don't realize is that Venezuela, Maduro may have just pulled off what Saddam Hussein was trying to pull off. And that is, and this will explain a little bit why, this will explain a lot of the demeanor of Trump. I think Trump is finally coming to the realization of how desperate the United States actually is, even though it's still the number one economy, it's the biggest economy. That's its saving grace. It just means it has the furthest to fall. That's it. But it's also the most indebted economy. And something, if you want to call it fifth dimensional warfare, that fits, is one thing I've been saying, really heavily say since 2010, is that where the United States blows up bridges, Chinese build bridges, right? And in 1991, okay, NAFTA was proposed and it ratified, I think, in 1994, right? And China was a nothing burger back then. They were slightly more powerful than North Korea at the time. Like they're really, North Korea is just an extension of China anyway. It's the vassal state, kind of like Israel controls the United States while China controls uh, North Korea to a great extent, although they're a bit of a wild card. But in general, that's what it is. And the thing is that what has happened is that Maduro is tried to do what Muammar Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein couldn't, and that is basically sell oil outside the petrodollar. Yes, that is a fucking big thing. If this is correct, I believe it is. So look into it because I could be. If I'm not correct, this whole video is going to be, a waste of your time. You know what I mean? But if it is correct that Maduro has found a way to sell outside the petrodollar, and the thing is that what they're trying to get Venezuela to do is buy U.S. debt. The same way might be the thing we've seen in Argentina. It's like, okay, well, Argentina says, okay, well, we're backing our dollar with the petrodollar, or are they buying U.S. debt of $20 billion? The problem is Trump has a $3 trillion nightmare coming at him just to keep the government running, right? And the man has no inclinations whatsoever, it seems, to seriously tackle the budget, meaning you're going to have to make cuts somewhere. Now, some places where he is, you have all these leftist activist judges standing in the way of it, right? Which those judges are treasonous, if you ask me. But again, I can complain a lot about Trump, but they're not help. It's this partisanship that is destroying the American people. It doesn't matter if it's on the left or on the right. We're going to fuck everybody over just so I could say you're the bad guy, rather than say, okay, well, as cringe as elbows up is up here, at least it's the partisans saying, look, our country's in crisis, and we're in the everything crisis in Canada, and we have to basically gamble the American economy is bad, ugly, and disaster. The Canadian economy is good, bad, and gamble. And the gamble is what either is going to turn our country into a superpower or we get destroyed completely. And when we get destroyed, it doesn't mean we become a part of the United States. It means Canada will just dissolve into like third world status. It'll be nothing. It'll just be a wasteland. The northern United States will follow suit. Then the southern United States and maybe Texas will be the last to fall economically, but it will fall because of the domino effect of the collapse, right? It's going to kill more people than lighting off every nuke on the planet at the same time. That's how desperate of a situation. Now, there's another problem. China, again, like I say, China, what its plan is to fight a warfare economically, and that's what they've been doing since we've given them NAFTA. Now, NAFTA wasn't even supposed to include China, but somehow offshoring everything for cheapest stuff for the lowest bidder for everyday low prices, which leads to everyday low wages, because of capitalism, which now leads to importing third world labor, putting your domestic population out of work. And then if the robot economy comes, I don't think we're going to make it to the AI utopia singularity. We're going to be destroyed way before that. I mean, there's going to be pockets of it, as I predicted, but these are going to be like 10 city blocks or 20 city blocks that's completely fenced off, with robot drones patrolling and everything, and a bunch of transhumanists living in there, and then everybody else is just going to be out in the wasteland, right? How fun's that going to be? But the thing is that Venezuela, like I said, Donald Trump needs to have his administration. It wouldn't matter if it was Donald Trump or if it was Biden. At some point, Biden would probably have had to done the same thing. Obama already did the same thing. They're all criminal. They're like, again, mob bosses fighting. There are no good guys. So Trump is just as evil as the rest of them. Yeah, there's some things Trump did good. Again, he still holds the record of the best president the United States has ever had in his first term overall, right? That whether you like him or you don't like him, it's just a fact. You know what I mean? But it's not a reigning endorsement. I'm just saying that's where the bar got set. But the United States has never hit the quality of life overall that Canada's hit, say, under the Stephen Harper years, which was the best quality of life Canadians have ever experienced, and probably some of the best quality of life human beings have ever experienced, even if it wasn't as grandiose as, the economy wasn't as grandiose as the States. The overall quality of life in Canada is still better than the States on average on most things. The Americans tend to have a little bit more wealth than us. And that's not a pot shot at the Americans. I'm just saying we have different strategies. We have more social programming here. Which has all kinds of disastrous things going on as well, especially with all the illegals and temporary foreign workers, which are never temporary. But that's because of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So we are in the pivot, but it's not the pivot to Asia per se. And no, the BRICS are not going to last. If the BRICS last 50 years, they'll probably be where we are now. You know what I mean? Like the BRICS are still new, right? So you had Bretton Woods back after World War II, and the pivot to the Americas. Basically, Britain basically gave up its 500-year-old superpower and handed the torch to the United States, right? And in return, the Americans said, "Look, we have a navy. The war is over, but we have a navy, and it's a big one, and we can patrol, be the world's police, so to speak, and we could allow trade to go everywhere. All you have to do is go on the petrodollar, right?" Which didn't start off right away there. That didn't really come in till about the 1970s, right? Because these things don't happen overnight, but these are long-term plans. So the plans they're making for us today with all this destruction of the economies and everything is for some crazy agenda 2030, 2035, 2040, 20. I think there's Agenda 2036, Agenda 2040, and then Agenda 2050, Agenda 2060, and then Agenda 2063 or something like that. They got some weird agendas out there. And they get revised and they get moved in, like Agenda 21 turned into Agenda 2030, that kind of stuff. And most people that know about Agenda 2030, they don't really realize what it's about or anything like that either. And the thing is there's a lot of bad things in it, right? The Trans-Pacific Partnership is a part of that. Now, I'm not saying every part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership is bad, but I'm saying the parts that are bad will destroy all sovereignty of all nations. Why? Because that's how you get mass globalism. Now, Canada is practicing globalism on a level I've never seen since Stephen Harper. But yet we're still doing all the dumb things that every other government's doing. We're not doing it to the same level. So, like, for example, another $250 million going to the Ukraine of the, I forget, 6 to whatever $billion that we've spent on Ukraine so far. While we have an everything crisis in Canada, right? You know what I mean? So, like, the world leaders, they just divert the money to wherever they want, to wars, to whatever projects they want. But fuck the people, right? And that's every government. Every government around the world has failed their people, bar none. Now, with the exception of one guy who, depending on what the real story is Javier Milei. Again, I've been bashing the shit out of this guy for basically doing that chainsaw thing. And basically, my understanding, again, if you guys already know this, it's just I haven't gotten around to doing the research. But my understanding is how he wanted to balance the budget was do the ultimate, nuclear conservative and just balance the budget overnight, a chainsaw, cut off all the excess spending, let the chips fall where they may, balance the budget, stop printing money, and live within your means. But money will be scarce, and your currency will completely collapse to like 0.000097 of a U.S. dollar or 96 of a U.S. dollar. Now, it was not 0.000098 of a U.S. dollar. So that is beyond hyperinflation, guys. That is fucking crazy. But a smaller country with a homogeneous population that doesn't have a migrant crisis, that was already at kind of a two-tier society where you just had either like two classes. You had either really rich or really poor, right? Like no middle class, right? That was sort of building a middle class. You're seeing El Salvador trying to build its middle class. And that's the one, like, if you had no millionaires in your society, but everybody was middle class, that would be the best. But I'm not one of those, okay, you shouldn't be allowed to make money, as much money as you want. I'm that capitalist, I'm like, yeah, let everybody have a chance. Because the people that say, oh, we got to, put a cap on the millionaires and stuff, it's always people that are multi-billion. What they're saying is that we don't want these people to compete with us. That's what they're really saying. And they sell it to the poor people as, oh, we got to tax the rich and stuff. Well, the rich don't pay taxes. They divert it anyway. They get bailouts. Trust me, they're not paying taxes. They're sucking up the taxes, right? Now, if Javier Milei actually does the true Austrian economic model, there's no more too big to fail, right? That means a lot of industries in Argentina are going to fail, right? Well, Maduro is I his policies I haven't really been following, so I don't know if this guy is just your typical, South American socialist dictator. Uh, like he's definitely not Hugo Chavez, right? Um, but maybe if you're lucky, he's like somewhere in a bit of a moderate, like Bolsonaro. Oh, he was an evil right winger, blah blah blah. Bolsonaro was actually pretty good for Brazil. Again, these guys are running like, they've got to govern around, drug cartel, and all that. Like, I mean, South America is, a very, very, most of the countries are second world or third world down there, right? So, it's a very tough place to survive, because like it's really the cartels that run everything. Scheinbaum in Mexico, yeah, she's doing okay, but she is part of the cartel. Like, if you don't realize this, I'm not calling her a drug runner or whatever, but trust me, she knows where to turn the blind eye. She knows where not to make sure the police go. You know what I mean? And in return, by not shaking up the cartels, uh, you know, she gets to govern, right? Where if you had, say, like in the Philippines with Duterte, who I don't know if they executed him or not yet, but I know they were going to arrest him. But when he was running, like he just went iron fist. Okay, no, we're just going to kill our cartels. No due process. We're just going to fucking kill them. Which brings us back to Venezuela, right? Um, Venezuela, okay, yes, has problems with the drug cartels. I'm sure Maduro's, the same thing as Scheinbaum and all the rest of them. Like Salvini, again, I'm sure, yes, he's putting up a good, we're going to get rid of the drug cartels, but he's probably giving a few of the kingpins, okay, we're going to give you guys the pass, but we're going to get rid of all your competition. Let us do that. And they'll be like, yeah, go ahead. You know what I mean? And in return, I want my people to be able to have manufacturing, stuff like that. We'll cut you in, right? This is not new. This is kind of the age of empire. It's always been like that. Pick anywhere in the world. It's just South America just has a real problem with it. Like, you know what I mean? But is it not the same problem with the CIA up here, or up in the United States, down there in the United States? Uh, like Canada, CSIS is not really into the drug running thing like the CIA is, because we just don't have the budget. That's all it is. But our CSIS, our intelligence officers, are probably just as corrupt as theirs. That's a problem. Like it's like we need to go after hate speech and racism and all that. No, you need to go after drug dealers. You need to go after pedophile rings. Again, the whole Epstein thing. Like, I mean, it's just like, you're telling me you have the list of everybody and you won't investigate it? Like, as we speak, people on that list. There's probably people on that list that are like harming children right now at the making of this. It's mind-boggling. Nothing burger, right? Frustrating. But that's bad guys, right? That's why there's no good guys in power. If we ever get a good guy in power, he's going to be the meanest son of a bitch you've ever seen, because he's just going to have people put against the wall. It's going to be like Stalin meets Alexander the Great meets Caesar. Like, it's going to be fucking brutal. He'll not only kill the bad guys. Well, Duterte is kind of an example of, okay, I'm just going to kill the drug dealers, kill the Muslim Uyghurs that were ISIS guys. I'll just, like, he basically called airstrikes on like Muslim villages in the Philippines, right? Because that's where all the terrorists were. So, like, he didn't overthink it. But that comes back to like Joseph Stalin kind of thinking, where it's like the death of a man is a tragedy, the million a statistic. And it's true. Like Stalin, again, an interesting character. I don't know what you guys know about Stalin, but the man, like, feared and revered, the Iron Fist. The only man I think that was actually, he didn't get to the same levels as Stalin, but the scariest dictator that I think has ever existed is Saddam Hussein. Just the way the man took power. Like, um, Saddam was a very, very powerful figure. He was a very powerful figure. I'm not saying that out of admiration. I'm saying that you would not want to have lived underneath this man. No more than you would want to be friends with Stalin. You know what I mean? Like that. Like you might as well just kill yourself because like you're going to piss this guy off on a whim, and he's going to have you, just murdered for whatever. Um, and these people come along, and they come along out of times like this because the strongman theory, whatever, like this is the guy that's going to fix the problem, but the problems are insolvent, so your 5-year plan isn't working. Kill everybody. You know what I mean? But let's get back to, okay, again, what I was saying, like for the people that want to become part of the 51st state and stuff like that. Okay, here's what you'd be joining on to, and if you understand what's going on in Venezuela, you'll understand like we're at like 11:59:59. Like we are there for the US economy. Really bad things are happening, but really really bad things. Like gold is at like 41 4200 right now. And this has happened in the past 3 months. This whole year has been like a complete rocket ship ride to the moon with the gold, right? And nobody seems to be noticing. Well, why is gold going up? Gold is not going up. The petrodollar is falling. You're losing purchasing power. It's just every country in the world is losing purchasing power. Like the U.S. dollar is ugly, but she's the prettiest one at the ball, right? So it's the furthest one to fall. But the problem with the United States is the debt, right? They have to sell the debt. This is where Venezuela comes in. So, like I said in the other video, anybody that thinks like this is all about stopping drug smugglers, no. What it is about is the United States has to do regime change in Venezuela the same way it did in Iraq. It's the same plan. It's the Iraqi plan. It's the same plan. Same plan they did in. It's basically what they're going to do is overthrow Maduro, take over the oil fields and minerals and mining and stuff like that because the United States needs it, and potash because, again, if they can get the oil, if the United States can get the oil from Venezuela, steal that oil and steal the potash there, then they can cut Canada off, right? Trump can't cut Canada off right now. That's just one part of it. But that's not the big part. That's just one other thing in there. So if he can do that, he can then cripple Alberta, right? And then Alberta, oh, that's it, they're going to collapse. And then it'd be like, okay, well, we have to become a part of the 51st state or else we're not going to survive, right? But I don't think that's going to play out that way, But there's a bigger one, is Venezuela pulled a Saddam Hussein. Look, 4 days after Saddam Hussein said he was going to sell oil outside the petrodollar and perhaps use the euro, you had a U.S. invasion. I remember listening to a U.S. general, I can't remember which one, right on public TV. Well, we can't have Saddam Hussein control the world's supply of oil, but it's their oil, So basically, that's what it was. It was basically protecting the petrodollar. I mean, it was one of multiple things, but that was the big one. Even George Bush, the cretin, again, these people never go to jail. Biggest war crime. Every American administration are just full of war criminals. It's horrible. Not one of them goes to jail. So you had like George Bush saying, "Well, we need the oil." Operation Iraqi Liberation. Anagram, oil. Oh, but the people will never figure out, like, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, did you get that out of, like, a fucking, like, oh, yeah, like, if that was the best the freaking CIA could come up with, they'll never know. Well, yeah, it's like when the anagram is oil, it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to talk in code here. Operation Iraqi Liberation. Oil. Yeah, oil. And that's what it was about, right? And minerals, and we're going to get rich. Like Donald Trump, we're going to get rich. Spoils of war. We're going to get rich. See, Donald Trump has already said everything out in the open. George Bush said most of it. Obama said some of it. Hillary Clinton said a lot of it out loud because these people are so smug. They know they're not going to go to jail, right? So they'll basically hang themselves, give themselves enough rope to hang by. But at some point, when the pitchfork revolution kicks in, and it might kick in after the Venezuelans. If you do airstrikes in Venezuela, the Venezuelans in the United States are going to start to take out your people. They're going to start to do terrorist attacks. They're going to start to do all this stuff because they're there. They can do this, right? And that's not going to rally the American people like, oh, well, weapons of mass destruction. They're not going to fall for it again. Like, we already know who did what. We know who did 9/11. That's why it's redacted. That's why you'll never, because they they're, we already know, just say it out loud. But then if they say it out loud and unredact it, then it's like, okay, well, we have to persecute that country, and that country is like pretty much controls the United States. So, and there was others in on it too, but it was an inside job. There's just no way you can not see it at this point unless you don't want to. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, when the conspiracy theorists, they're going like 10-0. You know what I mean? Like, at some point it's like, okay, it's as bad as we think it is. But what it is that China is working with Venezuela, right? And what are they doing? Well, they're getting oil from Venezuela. They're like the fourth largest reserve in the world, or third, or whatever. Like, it goes like Saudi Arabia, Russia, Venezuela, us, or something like that, the other way around. Like Canada, again, we have one of the largest oil reserves in the world, but yet we're paying like crazy money for our oil. Now, mind you, have to understand, for every liter we buy in Canada, 80% of that price is tax. That's what pays for healthcare, pays for roads, pays for giving money away to everybody else. That's what people don't understand. They're using fuel as a tax while they're trying to kill the automobile. The combustion engine. Yeah. I digress. But anyway, no, the Venezuelans are in a situation where they actually have a playing card. They don't have many playing cards, but they have one, and one big one, and that is selling the oil outside the petrodollar, which is almost a guarantee that your country will be overthrown. So that's what it's about. Now, the Venezuelan speedboats, okay, with the drug cartels. Okay, well, what were the names of the people on the boats? I don't know. You don't know. What drugs were they smuggling? We don't know. Were they drug boats? Probably. But that was more for like the Coast Guard to, round them up, arrest them, do whatever. Now, if you arrested these drug smugglers and say, okay, well, we're going to have the death penalty for anybody that we catch on the drug boat, but you give them their fair day in court, I'm all for that. Yeah, kill the drug dealers. Kill them. But make sure you do legal process. Right, even if they're foreigners, I don't care. Like say, as soon as they're coming into our waters, we're going to catch you, and we catch you. You're gonna, and we catch, XYZ amount of drugs. Fentanyl. If there's any fentanyl in there, it's considered trafficking, and you will either go to jail for life. But say over like 2 ounces, we're going to execute you as a trafficker, right? Something like that. And you'd say, oh, that's barbaric, and it doesn't like the libertarians are always saying, oh, well, the death penalty really doesn't stop crime. Well, it stops repeat crime. It really does. And this whole idea of plea bargaining, get rid of it. Just fucking get rid of it. I don't think you should allow plea bargaining. I'll tell you why. Because if you really want to take out the drug cartels, don't go after the cartels, go after their mules. You know what I mean? Get the little guy. Make it so painful for the little guy that he won't even fucking consider doing that. Oh, yeah, I was only selling a little bit of fentanyl. Yeah, okay, well, if you tell us, we'll let you go. No, don't let him go. Say, no, you're going to jail. You're going to sit there till your trial. And if you had more than this on you, you're going to get executed. You do that after about 150 of those guys get killed. Suddenly you have no more drug problem in your country. Pick a country, any country. Or very little. Because there's only the most hard-ass people will still do that kind of stuff, right? It's kind of like El Chapo. Like you really think El Chapo was clever enough to really be able to get out of jail that many jailbreaks? Did you think he's like it was just about him paying off a couple of guards to get out. No, it's not that at all. Now, mind you, if you did catch guards that took a bribe, they need to be executed. You give them their day in court, death penalty. Like, come down full iron fist on that. Anyway, I digress. So the thing is that they blew a couple of these boats out of the water, and one in particular, there was survivors. And now they're saying Pete Higgs, I think it's Pete Hegseth, I can't say the guy's name, might be, well, those probably won't charge him, but he might be guilty of actual war crimes because, of course, no one's, the captain of the ship that went back, said, go back and finish them off. I mean, these guys are completely defenseless in the water. Yes, they're drug dealers. Arrest them. Like, you're on a warship. You can get these guys onto the ship and into the, and lock them up and, chain them to a fucking pipe or something until you get back to the mainland. Fly them out on a helicopter, right to the authorities. You could do this, right? No. We're going to go kill men that are just sitting in the water. Look, naval battles of World War II, right? Naval battles of World War II. Warships blasting the shit out of each other. The victor ship, if it wasn't too badly crippled, would usually go pick up the survivors of the other enemy ship and take them as prisoners of war. That was the normal. A few times, men would go down and like the other guys couldn't get close enough to. I mean, you're talking, Battle of the North Atlantic, in 30-foot waves. Good luck trying to rescue men out of that, right? While you're blasting the shit out of each other, with death guns, right? Think like the Bismarck versus the Hook. There was 3 survivors of the Hook, whatever. Or what they do is allow, after the battle, okay, well, you go pick up your survivors, we'll go pick up our survivors, whatever. That's what you do. That's what you do. But the thing is that the commander's like, well, no, well, we ordered that. Trump's like, well, no, I wouldn't have ordered that. I would have ordered the hit, but not that. So he's already guilty. It's like, okay, so you've already broke rule of law of just, without a declaration of war, you're shooting another nation's citizens, whether they're on a boat or whatever, doesn't matter. You're killing those people. Now, they may be drug dealers, sure, but you need rule of law to determine that. You need to arrest these people, right? Seize the boat. Scuttle the boat after, but you need the evidence from the boat. You know what I mean? Like, okay, shoot the boat. Okay, well, the boat's going down, it goes down, whatever. But you need to intercept the boat. And when you intercept the boat, it's like, okay, get the drugs off of it, then scuttle the boat. You know what I mean? So you have the evidence. You can destroy the drugs after, after the court trial. You know what I mean? That's why you're supposed to do it, But no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do acts of war. So Venezuela, I don't know how well armed they are. I haven't looked at their military, but I think they have a lot more hardware than we know of. And plus with the Russians getting in there, like, look, the Russians are like, they don't need oil from Venezuela, but they need other things from Venezuela, right? Now, you have to understand another reason why Venezuela is so important is because Venezuela and Cuba do trade, right? Cuba, if you take out Venezuela, Cuba will collapse because it won't be able to get oil from anybody else. So Maduro's not only selling oil to Cuba, which, okay, I'm not a fan of the Cuban regime. I mean, those poor people. I have friends that go to Cuba all the time for vacation. I'm not mad at my friends, but like people that go to Cuba, you understand, you're keeping a communist regime going. You're not helping the Cuban people. I mean, there's the have and have-nots, like all the South American countries. This one happens to be out on an island, right? But Cuba, like, go to Puerto Rico instead. If you want to go somewhere a little bit better, go to Puerto Rico instead of Cuba. If you have to go there, or go to the Bahamas, or go somewhere else, anywhere. Go to Dominican Republic. Go anywhere but Cuba. You know what I mean? Look, Fidel Castro, probably the second scariest man to ever live, dictator to ever live. his brother Raul, I think, is still in charge unless he's dead. I mean, these men are old men, right? I'm not sure who's in charge in Cuba right now. But Cuba, like the Cubans, they've suffered enough. They've suffered enough. Don't keep the regime going, right? Now, mind you, the Venezuelans want to keep the Cuban regime going. That's on them. But just don't be a part of it. You know what I mean? Don't be a part of what just don't be a part of that because that's what keeps that shit going, right? But that said, it also we shouldn't be intervening and blowing boats out of the water and then threatening to do land invasions. Do you understand what happened in the Bay of Pigs? This is why you can't just go into a South American country. Sure, that was in the 1980s or whatever. It was a disaster. Or was that in the 60s? When was the Bay of Pigs? But anyway, yeah, like that picture, like attacking the Venezuelans when they know you're coming, particularly, would be a military disaster. It would make Dieppe look like a good plan. You know what I mean? And Dieppe was actually done on purpose to capture the Enigma code machine, and it was done as a distraction. It's just that they sacrificed, quite a few Canadian. Like there was 3,600 Canadians that landed there, right? Many were captured, many were killed. But the thing is that Maduro is now working outside the U.S. petrodollar, which means they're not taking petrodollar debt. The Chinese are not able, are like they're not going to take U.S. debt unless they necessarily have to. They may have to just to keep themselves alive because the Chinese economy and the American economy, like China's number one customer is the United States. It's the biggest economy. You can't just make that up with the BRICS countries, right? So that BRICS pivot, you have to understand there's going to be massive job losses in China as a result of the United States collapsing, right? It will destroy China. China will go into a massive civil war. You'll get the rise of the Black Dragon out of that, and that guy will be the biggest tyrant in human history, rivaling like Genghis Khan meets Mao meets Saddam Hussein meets Hitler meets Stalin, right? Like you're going to get that guy out of China once China collapses. It's just it's the only way they're going to be able to rule it, and that'll probably happen between tensions rising and possibly you'll see like a war between India, Pakistan, and India and China at the same time. The whole region is going to explode, and maybe North Korea and South Korea go at each other too. Japan can't take on any more U.S. debt. They're broke. They're completely fucking broke, right? The reason why Japan got hit so hard in the 90s is because they took on U.S. debt. And that's why they were hit with the hyperinflation, right? And they still haven't fully recovered from that. And Japan is a small island nation. Like it like there's only about 4 major areas of the population in Japan because it's literally an island that it's a very mountainous island, right? So there's not a lot of flat land there. So most of their populations are in like Nagasaki, Tokyo, places like that, very densely populated, whatever, and resources for them are still expensive, very expensive, right? So they have to play better in their, they have to, obviously Japan and China are never, the Chinese and the Japanese are never going to get along. They have such bad blood, especially with the Japanese. The Japanese were brutal in the area. They brutalized everybody in the area. It's for such a small nation, you have to hand it to the Japanese for their imperialism. They conquered the Philippines. They conquered Malaysia. They conquered China. They fucking destroyed China. They just took so much territory. It was unbelievable. And then they lost it after World War II, right? But yet the rising sun still rises, right? But they can't afford to pay for the collapse of the United States. Europe can't afford to pay for the collapse of the United States. They already did that in 2008. That's why Europe got hit so bad with the economic collapse. It was diverted to Europe. The Americans, they took a bit of a hit, but they basically diverted the crash to Europe. And you can't do that now because Europe hasn't recovered from 2008. Nobody has. Um, the best country that was recovering from the 2008 collapse was us up here in Canada because we really didn't get hit hardly at all, but we had the best banking practices. Our debt to GDP wasn't so far gone. But now under Trudeau, or the last past 10 years of Trudeau, that may have changed. Now, will Carney be able to reel that in with the current budget? It's if he follows suit to budget, we balance the budget in 10 years, we'll be saved. You know what I mean? Whether it's a liberal government or conservative government, if we have a balanced budget. So Javier Milei, if he has a balanced budget and he can stick to that, yes, the Argentinians are going to be suffering with a hyperinflation for probably a decade or so. But after that, as their purchasing power starts to come back, interest rates start to go up a bit, they will be able to have a vibrant economy if they don't go back into old, as long as old habits die hard, right? And this is one thing the United States cannot do. You cannot do a Javier Milei style balance the budget. They tried it with the Doge. It didn't work. Donald Trump needed to raise taxes megally. Well, how do you do that? Trade war on everything. We need, and that's what it's about. It's not about Canada fucking the United States over. The lowbrow people think of it that way, but no, it's not that. Donald Trump needs to raise enough. He needs to raise $3 trillion just to keep the damn government going. It's an impossible situation. Oh, ambulance. Yep, I think it's the ambulance. Or a cop car. There's been an awful lot of ambulances and cop cars in the last past 2 weeks. That's ambulance. Oh, I hope it's somebody I know. And they always seem to be heading up that way to Shawville, I guess. Normally when they're here, they end up going up to Maniwaki, though, for that hospital. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, so if Maduro went outside the U.S. dollar, and they're not going to take on any debt, obviously. The only option is democracy JDAMs. Like Max Kaiser quoted, and he said this in 2010, I don't think a truer word has been spoken. The United States has a death and debt-based economy. You take the petrodollar, or we drop democracy JDAMs on you. Or he said democracy bombs, I said democracy JDAMs. Same thing. But is that not true? So the thing is that in order to drop your democracy JDAMs, you need to sell these are the bad guys. The problem is the Trump administration jumped the gun. They didn't get enough. The news needs to be flashing incubator babies and weapons of mass destruction and all that stuff that wasn't true at all. For at least a year or 2 years, just for the populace to say, yes, we got to go get that fucking Maduro guy, right? I'm not saying Maduro's a good guy. He's clearly not a good guy, but I wouldn't want to live under him. But the same thing. It's like he's not messing with us per se, other than he's looking after the interest of his own country and not just falling in line with the petrodollar system. The petrodollar system is dying. And like I say, us Canadians, we're hanging on. We're not only hanging on to the drowning man, we are like a tumor hooked to a bigger tumor. That's why the Canadian economy, as I explained, and the U.S. economy, that's why Trump can't just flip the switch and shut off the Canadian economy and collapse us and take all the resources. That's the goal, but he won't be able to do that. That's what his administration wants. That's what his donors want. It's not just about Trump. Like Trump's a big part of it, but it's not going to work like that. Carney, again, not a guy I'm a fan of, but he's the other mob boss fighting against the Trump mob boss versus the Carney mob boss, right? And when you look at it, the world as mob bosses fighting, the world leaders make a lot more sense of the dumb shit that they do, right? Because it's not about us, it's about the donor class, the people right up at the top of the money and the control of all the resources. It's, it's done in such a way that they don't care about what happens to the little guy. So I don't know if you're going to see an actual boots on the ground invasion of Venezuela. But if you do, there's no way for the United States to fight that war. That will make Vietnam look like a joke. That, it'll be the worst disaster for the Trump administration, to the point where it'll probably spark civil vigilante unrest. Where, well, no matter which way you go, what you're looking at is, if you attack, even if they're successful, okay, they did airstrikes on. Maduro's palace or whatever. No, going the other way. Weird. Must be a bad accident or something. Why would he be going the other way though? Don't know. Anyway, but the point I'm getting at is that the second bombs start falling on Venezuela, you're going to see civil unrest in the states of people just like, look, we voted. The left is just going to protest because they protest everything anyway, and they, that's just par for the course now, right? But you're going to get the right protesting, saying we voted for you not to do these things, not to start another fucking endless war, not to sacrifice more American lives for fucking globalist causes, right? Not to get us into more debt with more wars. And Trump is he's a complete hawk. We have to, overthrow Syria. We have to go to war with Iran. We have to go to war with Venezuela. We have to go to war with, we have to build Gaz Largo, arm the, help the Israelis genocide the Palestinians. I don't really care for the Palestinians. I don't want to live beside them either. But that said, they're not our fight. That's, Israel, screw Israel. I don't care what happens to Israel. If they want to kill everybody in the region and those people stand up and fight against them, well, fine. That's their problem. We should not be arming that. Right? And that's what people voted for Trump not to do. Right? So if you do just airstrikes, well, yes, the Americans have a lot of air power. But the thing is airstrikes will accomplish absolutely nothing in Venezuela. Yes, you can cripple their economy again. That's not like it's hard to do. They don't have much of an economy. Like they have a lot of economic problems to begin with, right? Okay, so you go and okay, we're going to hit the food supplies like they normally do, like they did in Syria and Iraq and all that. Okay, we'll hit all the grain silos, bomb those, because the brave pilots will well, yeah, but we're starving out the regime. No, you're just starving innocent people. That's all you do. The same way, like this ship commander, no fucking brain of his own. Hey, I can't just because I was ordered to go back and kill these people doesn't mean I can actually do that. Well, it wasn't my order. Yes, it was. So that ship commander, okay, and the guys that pulled the trigger on these guys in the water, even if they were the lowest scumbags in the earth, they need to be held to account for crimes against humanity and war crimes. It doesn't matter if you're, just following orders. That's what the ship commander is saying. So when the U.S. government tells the soldiers to open fire on the U.S. citizens for civil unrest, they're just following orders, time and time again. No brave law enforcement or military anywhere to be found. All they do is just pick on the people because we got insane leaders. You know what I mean? So yes, if Hegsteff has to fry, so does this captain of the ship. These people need to be hung for crimes against humanity. That's what even if you kill drug dealers. Yes, they're low lives, whatever. But without the rule of law, you have vigilante justice, and now you're going to get blowback and terrorism for just willy-nilly doing acts of war against another country, right? Nobody voted to go to war here. Anyway, I digress. But the thing is that when they start airstriking Venezuela, it will be coded as a big victory, okay? But it will accomplish nothing. So, okay, well, if you hit the oil fields, well, you're going to have to rebuild those oil fields after you take them over. If you can successfully kill Maduro, well, you're going to get a Venezuelan uprising. They will not accept whoever you put in there. They did it the last time. They're not going to do it again. People are done with this regime change bullshit, right? We saw the beginning of that in uh, Egypt when 80 million Egyptians came out and said, or 11 million Egyptians came out and said, Morsi, you're fucking fired. You guys remember that? Yeah, there was a palace coup, basically. The guy in Djibouti, the leader of Djibouti, there running with his suitcase, clothes dangling out, running towards the ship with the mob on it. Chasing him down, literally chasing him down the street. Like you can't make this up. You can watch it. It's like there he is. He made it to the ship, and that's it. He's never going back to that country again. He's a dead man if he does. But let's say the U.S. bombs and kills a bunch of civilians as they normally do. Here's what's going to happen: is the Venezuelans in the United States are going to rise up. Now, what are you going to do about that? You could deport some of them, sure, and some of them do need to be deported. But now you've got an insurgency. You know what I mean? And I have no doubt that if you bomb Venezuela, Maduro will probably activate, with coordination of probably Russia, China, and Iran, saying, hey, here, let's get these guys some supplies so they can do some real fucking damage. Suddenly you're going to see trains going off the rails. You're going to see all kinds of industrial accidents. This is sabotage. We saw it a lot in 2019, where I guess it was probably my Iranian and a Russian probably, saboteurs. A lot of these fires that we're seeing, it's climate change. No, it's arson. My hunch is a lot of that is probably foreign saboteurs just saying, yeah, let's just do damage in the country. You know what I mean? It's fifth dimensional warfare. So the other thing is, okay, well, you're not going to take out Maduro with jets unless you get lucky with an airstrike, right? Maybe you get him with a drone, whatever. Okay, fine. But if he knows how to hide, I mean, that place, might not be the easiest to find him. You know what I mean? If he knows how to evade and his military guys know how to evade and keep him safe, whether he's in a bunker or whatever, you might not be able to find this guy. And if that's the case, then he can come up with, he can order the military to do whatever, right? In retaliation. And we're making the assumption that they have no anti-shipping missiles. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, yeah, but the Tomahawk missile's got a 600-mile range or a 1,000-mile range or 2,500-mile range, depending on how you configure it. Okay, great, but maybe they've got some ice cannons that have the same range, maybe they're older models, whatever. But the Russians have been sending stuff to Cuba. They have been sending stuff to Venezuela. This is not new. The Russians definitely do diplomacy runs with their Tu-160s to Venezuela, twice a year or something like that. Sometimes they send them to Cuba, whatever. And we know that the Cubans will come to the support of Venezuela. They usually do. It's just they do with back channels. So what you do is Russia drops the weapons off in Cuba, and then the Cubans find ways to get them over to Venezuela. Now, if you have a naval blockade, that might be harder, but not impossible. Because it just depends on what route you take, right? So it's like, okay, well, if the U.S. warships are there, and there's 12 of them there, I think there's 12 in the region right now, maybe 14. A typical carrier group is about 14 vessels, typically. So if you've got 6 Iskanders to 12 Iskanders sitting on the shoreline, and then you do a drone swarm, and the other thing I'm wondering is how many speedboats. I think, if anything, the Venezuelans would probably utilize the Iranian-style strategy of like 250 small, like 30 to 40 foot long PT boat type things. Okay, like let's say they have like World War II PT boats. Okay, but they have like 200 of them, or something similar, or even like World War II German S boats. Okay, with the same technology. 200 of those against a carrier group there'd be a slaughter for the carrier group. Yeah, you might destroy almost all the boats in the process, but you sink so many destroyers, and like there'd be no way to counter those boats. The Americans can't do this with Iran already. If the Iranians send their their fleets of speedboats in the Strait of Hormuz, they sink the carrier. Every war game has shown that they're going to sink the carrier group. The thing is you have this mentality of the American military is so powerful it's invincible, and it's clearly shown that it's not. Now, if you could get a landing, there's probably only a handful of places where you could strategically land American Marines, and I'm sure those places are going to be heavily defended. So even if you try to take them out air defense wise, you're trying to or air power wise, you're still trying to find people that are hiding in the jungle on the coastline. Again, what kind of ships do they have? What kind of anti-shipping missiles do they have? What can be fired off of aircraft? You know what I mean? How many aircraft? I know they do have Su-30s. Su-30s, again, I'm sure the Venezuelans don't, their pilots aren't as trained as well as the American ones, but those are potent airplanes in the hands of good pilots. And that's the only question. Do they have good pilots or not? So it doesn't mean the Venezuelans could necessarily win a war against the United States, but they could probably defend their own territory to a degree where the second you sink an aircraft carrier, you kill 5,000 to 8,000 people. Every warship you sink is about 300 people, 260 to 300 people. Do you really think that the United States populace would tolerate that of an unnecessary war? That would create a military coup probably in the United States, and if not a military coup, definitely an insurgency coup, because the people that are going to kill Donald Trump are going to be right wingers, not left wingers. The next assassination attempt, not calling for it, I'm just saying I don't see how it doesn't happen now, is probably going to be the people that voted for him. Remember when I said, he was probably going to be killed by a U.S. veteran, and then there was a U.S. veteran that was planning the attempt? Guys, the reason why I could pick this out so accurately is because you look at the bigger picture, you connect the dots, and you play a little bit of chess here. You gotta speculate a lot, sure, but the thing is that Donald Trump doesn't hold any cards at this point. He's got basically snake eyes of $3 trillion to come up with, right? And he's tried to do it with the tariff tax. It's not working. It's not enough. It's just not enough. Meanwhile, they're still spending like drunken sailors, right? And he's not serious about balancing the budget. So you got to raise the debt ceiling, right? Yes, you can kick that can down the road fairly far, but there does come a point where just things are so unaffordable. We're not even there yet, and look at how much people are complaining about housing now. Medications, food, electricity, energy, gasoline. People are just like, it's crazy. And we're not even at the beginnings of the hyperinflation, or we're at the we're not even there yet. We're like, wait till the US dollar takes an Argentinian twist. What does that look like? That looks like millions dead in the United States from poverty and starvation and not getting medication. Look what happened in 2020 with the diabetics, right? You know what I mean? Like it's just everything shut down and suddenly look at the cost of basically insulin in the United States. It's a genocide program. It really is. It's like, because free market capitalism will charge you $700 and something per. Many Americans come into Canada just to get their insulin shots, just because you can't afford them. You can't afford them in the States. Some states are not too bad, but it's still like it's $140. If you had to spend $140 every month just to stay alive, on top of all your other expenses, could you? Most people couldn't. Most people could not, right? So, then you want to go start another fake war somewhere, which is only going to rack up the debt even higher. Where what Trump has to do is get serious about balancing the budget, starting with cutting foreign aid to, say, countries like Israel and Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. Oh, but we'll lose influence and blah, blah, blah. And our friends in the Middle East, fuck them. Just like self-preservation or die. The Ukraine war, Trump had the out with the Ukraine war and he goes right back into it. I mean, us, we're doing the same thing. I mean, we can't afford, like if we were to keep that $240 million for ourselves and put that towards balancing the budget, but it's like, our budget also includes, like in our military spending, of sending weapons to Ukrainians like air defenses and all the shit that we need. Like all the shit that we need. And again, what's the United States going to fight the Venezuelans with? You've given almost all your weapons to the Ukraine. Like we're low on artillery, we're low on cruise missiles, we're low on everything, right? But yeah, that's something that I wanted to bring up because we'll have to see how this plays out, but it's going to be a massive, massive disaster if they attack Venezuela for many reasons. The MAGA people, okay, which I know when you listen to the partisan left channels, it's like, oh, MAGA people are just racists and bigots and they're just horrible. No, they are good people that believe Donald Trump was going to be the good guy and end the wars and make America great again. They believed it, okay? Trump had no intentions of this. I kind of figured that out in his second year in his first term, that all he cares about is really Israel, right? And and the stakeholder capitalist investor class and his donors. That's all he really cares about. He doesn't really care about anything other than that. He doesn't hate the United States like Joe Biden did, so he's not woke or whatever, but he doesn't care about what happens to American people. If he did, he would be making the necessary cuts that he needs to make to start balancing the budget, because no country right now can survive without a balanced budget. So if you're not working actively to get there, and it can be done for a lot of countries, even as impossible as it seems for the United States, there is things it's going to do, but it's going to hurt. So if you're going to hurt people, you're better off to cut the foreigners off before you cut your citizens off, right? And you need to get people to like for example, on the border, Trump was doing fairly well on the border for what he's, what he promised. So it's not as perfect, but he's got 40 million illegals that are sitting there, either taking up American jobs and housing and all that, using the medical system and all that, and paying a lot of welfare. He's got to cut the welfare off of those people, saying, look, those people have to go. And the easiest way to get rid of those people is to basically phase them out. It's going to take a couple of years. So anybody working in critical infrastructure or farming or something like that, okay, look, we're going to give you your visa. You just got to come forward. Now, after 6 months from today, if you don't have your visa, we're just going to deport you on the spot, and we're going to give your employer a $10,000 or $12,000 fine. That's what Ron Paul was suggesting. I'm like, yeah, you go after the employers. Trust me, they just won't hire anybody, right? But the Trans-Pacific Partnership is a big problem of this as well. And the Americans are signed on to it the same way we are in Canada. Hence why we're getting all this replacement migration and stuff. And the only argument you get is, oh, you're racist, bigot, whatever. No, it's creating so many problems. Even for the immigrants that are here legally and went through the right channels, even they're complaining. You know what I mean? So it's not just, it has consequences, right? So none of it's easy decisions. So maybe Javier Milei had it right, and you got to pull the Band-Aid off and whatever. But are you willing to kill all those people in the process? Meaning just the depravity of cutting off services. Now, what do the conservatives typically do? Well, they cut like healthcare and stuff like that, mental health and all that. And we're seeing the results of that. It's not good. Rather than cutting off like foreign aid military spending to Israel or something like that. Like, how about you just cut Israel off altogether? You'll save at least $3.5 billion a year, of the main payment and whatever. How about you close down some of these 700 U.S. bases around the world? You know what? Maybe it's time to get out of the Middle East, permanently. Oh, but then the Russians will go in. They'll take over. Fine, let them. Look, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. We have to balance our budgets. And you're not going to balance budgets by starting new wars. And that distraction is not going to work for much longer, because this idea of drafting people to go fight for Israel or the Ukraine or go attack the Iranians or the Venezuelans, nobody. That's why nobody's signing up to the military. That and plus the woke stuff, right? But that's the main reason why. Because why would anybody want to go fight and die for globalist bankers. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to do that. It's not about protecting your nation at that point. Venezuelan, what does a fridge have to do with an apple cart? Like it just doesn't. They're too removed from me. Like there's no reason to go into Venezuela whatsoever. If you want to catch the drug cartels coming across, catch them, arrest them, do that. But it's not about that. It's about basically regime change. That's what it's about. The Americans have done like 48 regime change, probably about 49 now. You add Syria in there, since World War II. They've overthrown that many governments, right? So they're going for number 50, or whatever. But if you landed troops, like you have to understand, you can't just go to war overnight. Look, China cannot take Taiwan without massive, massive losses. And if you think about the difference between the Taiwanese military and the Chinese military, you could say it's like 10 to 1. It's like 10 to 1 in favor of China on pretty much across the board, right? And in some areas, it's way in favor of China. Even with that overwhelming force of China, to attack Taiwan would be the most humiliating defeat for China. Even the United States couldn't take out Taiwan. Even China and the United States and Russia together could not take out Taiwan within a year and a half. They would not be able to do it, even if the island was completely isolated. Yeah, you could pulverize it with airstrikes and stuff like that, but you're basically fighting Iwo Jima 2.0 with jungle, in the jungle, in the most unhospitable waters with like maybe at best 13 possible heavily defended landing spots. That's Taiwan, right? Now Venezuela is pretty much landing on jungle, right? With a country that borders other countries that can smuggle shit in, weapons, whatever they need. Like you don't have to land in Venezuela with Russian equipment. You can land in neighboring countries and drive it over the border. And most of the neighboring countries will probably be on the side of Venezuela against the United States, because it's like, well, the Americanos or gringos are just attacking us for no reason, right? That's the way the South American people are going to see this. Is it just you're just attacking us because we're brown or whatever? They're not going to. They might not like most of the people that are for attacking Venezuela. Either they don't understand what's really going on, which again always comes back to the petrodollar. That the petrodollar is collapsing. China is not going to be buying as much of the debt. China is the only one that can really buy the debt, but the United States is trying to use a big stick with China, saying, "Hey, we're going to go to war with you, but please buy our debt," or we're not going to be able to fund our government. And China is in a spot where it's kind of like, well, it's a Siamese twin to us. If the United States collapses, there goes our number one customer, and we have a lot of their debt, right? But China has been trying to get rid of this debt for a better part of a decade now. So they're buying less and less of it every year. And that's why the Chinese have been, building up their gold reserves like crazy for, particularly since the George Soros's pivot and the Rothschild pivot to Asia in 2012, right? With the the Belt and Roads Initiative and the BRICS nations, all that stuff came online, started coming online. And they're like, okay, well, China's like, okay, well, the US dollar is going to collapse in the future. And that's what China is waiting for, But the Chinese don't have the ability to project power, even though they're building a blue water navy and stuff like that. China will not run the world. It's going to lose everything as well. For a bunch of reasons. Number one, the second the United States collapses, everybody goes nationalist and tribal. Save your own. You know what I mean? So that's gonna be really chaotic. It's already chaotic, but it's gonna be really chaotic. And I think, like I say, with the farming crisis that we have down there in the States, I don't know how bad it's going to get. I don't know if the Americans, and you're already starting to see the food prices tick up. The crops are picked for the season pretty much. Right now, I'm sure in the South, the farmers in the South are still growing stuff because they can grow all year round. But the northern states are done for the season, right? And what I don't know is with all the damage that Trump did with the blanket tariffs on everything, particularly pertaining to input costs for farmers, how many farmers lost their farms, just so Monsanto can go, Bill Gates can go buy them up. Again, Bill Gates and Trump are like buddies. So, you don't believe me? Well, just go look at Trump with Pfizer and Monsanto. Oh yeah, like again, Trump is all for big corporations. He's all for the guys that we don't like, right? But what I'm getting at is that Trump is in a position where he's kind of, again, what does he? Their only option he has is to make meaningful cuts, right? Which, yes, you're going to make meaningful cuts across the board, but where he can make the savings is basically, turning the United States neutral, which would be the most make America great, America first thing you could do. You know what? Say, look, we're out of NATO, we're out of the Ukraine, we're out of Israel. We're not going to attack Venezuela. We're not going to fund that stuff. We're going to be more just, you guys, if you want to kill each other, just kill each other. Fuck you. If he did that, he could save billions, possibly even $1 trillion right there, just by doing that. And that would be massive austerity. That means you're going to be laying off a good proportion of your military. There's no doubt about that. But you could do national projects as a stimulus, saying, okay, well, we're going to put these soldiers out of work. That sucks, but when you get back here, you're going to start, building a super train across the country. You're going to start building refineries. You're going to all that, right? Which is another problem, that when they steal the oil from the Venezuelans, is that it's heavy crude. So you need those Venezuelan refineries. You can't just blow them up, or you won't be able to do anything with the oil. That's one of the problems the Americans have. They have oil, but they have the light oil. They don't have. They'll run short on diesel. It's the heavy crude, like what we sell them and stuff like that. That's what Venezuelan has. The Venezuelans have, right? So we'll see how this plays out. At this point, can Trump back out of it? I don't know, because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't take out Venezuela, there's no, you're going to lose your ability to control, like the Americans won't have the ability to control the petrodollar. Like people are going to sell oil out. Like the Russians are already selling oil outside the petrodollar. The Chinese are buying oil outside the petrodollar. The Venezuelans are doing it. The Iranians are doing it. Many nations are saying, like, look, we're going to make deals. The United States is not going to be a part of it. Yes, it's the biggest economy in the world, and everybody wants to be a big part of it. And it's something that you keep hearing up here in Canada. Why can't Carney make a deal with Trump? Because you can't. Trump doesn't want a deal. He wants to take us over. He wants to steal our resources so he can get out of the petrodollar. That's one of the things he wants to do, right? And his administration. Carney knows this. That's why he's like, why haven't you talked to Trump today? Well, who cares? Okay, maybe not the proper thing to say. I'm not defending Carney, but what I'm saying is I understand why he said it, because it's like, look, I've tried with that guy. You can't make a deal with him. He's insolvent. He keeps moving the goalposts. Every time Carney, even if you don't like Carney, every time he's tried to make a deal with Trump, Trump has moved the goalposts. And then the tracker said, well, it's because Carney didn't do this. He didn't live up to this. He didn't live up to that. But then when you look at it, it's like, okay, well, he didn't, we didn't even get a chance, like the border thing. Canada, okay, was stepping in the right direction on the border. And then it was like, okay, well, that's not good enough. Move the goalposts again. Yeah, but it's like, okay, it's not going to happen overnight. You know what I mean? Like, it's like Trump is so rigid with us that and then, of course, just listen to the man. We don't need anything from Canada. You do. But, he believes that. He believes that the United States doesn't need Canada at all. But he doesn't realize, or maybe now he's starting to realize, and this is why, like, again, he hasn't shut off the Canadian economy, is because he can't. Because you again, that 2% rounding error that you keep hearing the proponents of Trump saying that, oh, well, like we only do 2% trade with the Canadians, it doesn't matter. We can just cut that off. If Trump cut off just on his side of the border, say, we're just not going to buy anything from Canada. you would destroy 20 to 30% of the U.S. economy because of the hydro. It's not how much the cost, it's what we're selling. It's like selling you air. You need it. You can't make cutback. Like, you need it. And if you can't produce it, like the potash, 80% of the fertilizer that the Americans buy is from us, because you guys can't produce it. The only other people that could sell you the potash in the quantity that the Americans need is Venezuela, China, or Russia, or us, and maybe possibly Ukraine. Problem with Ukraine is there's tanks in the wheat fields. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You can't quite get that's why, like, earlier this year when you heard Trump going on about, oh, we're going to get all these great deals with Ukraine. Yeah, but they're still at war. You're assuming that the Ukrainians are going to win. And if you're looking at a map, the Ukrainians are not winning. I admire the Ukrainians' will to fight. I feel bad that the Obama administration got them into the war in the first place. A war that didn't have to happen. They walked right into what Russia wanted. Like, I mean, you gave the Russians everything. And the Russians responded accordingly. You cooed, they counter-cooed. Now you're losing Ukraine. Fighting, Russia to the last Ukrainian is the most cruel thing. Number one, it's a brothers' war. Number two, it's like, it's NATO fighting. Like, they don't care how many Ukrainians get killed. You know what I mean? I'm just like, okay, I get it. If my country was invaded, I'd be like the Ukrainians. No, to the death. You know what I mean? Fine, I understand that. But the sooner that we step out of it, the sooner they won't be able to fight, and they'll have to make the compromise. They're going to lose the Donbass. They've lost it. They're not getting it back, ever. They're never going to get Crimea back. If the Russians decide to take Odessa, which I'm really surprised they haven't, I still haven't figured that one out. Because I thought as soon as they get to Odessa, it's game over. The Ukrainians will be completely cut off. Except for everything will have to come through Poland, right? But, like, I don't know, maybe the Ukrainians will pull a rabbit out of the hat, but it's not up to us to fight that fight. We can't afford it. They can't afford it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that because I really wanted to focus on Venezuela on this one. But I'm thinking that, a lot of people are probably not aware of what, if this is true that, Maduro is selling oil outside the petrodollar. He's probably been doing it for a while. The U.S. propaganda machine didn't do its job properly to get the American people on board with an invasion. So now an invasion might be impossible because it'll be so politically, like, Americans are sick of war, But as long as you have men just following orders, you're killing innocent people. Well, what happened to the Magna Carta? If you really want to uphold Western values, you say, okay, yeah, we just destroyed a boat that we should have probably stopped and seized. You say, yeah, but we can't catch the speedboats. You can catch the speedboats. You can they fucking catch cartel submarines. You know what I mean? You can catch the speedboats. And when you catch the speedboats, you arrest the guys, you take the evidence, and then if you want to execute the guys after, rule of law, that would be the best example in the world, and other people might follow suit, and then maybe, just maybe, we can actually start, getting rid of the drug problems, in the world, the drug trafficking. Maybe we can get the pedophile rings when we're out. But you have to understand, the drugs fund that stuff too, right? So I'm all for going after the drug dealers. But I'm not for shooting people in the water without knowing their names or what they've actually done. Because you don't even know if there was drugs on the boat. Why? Because you sunk it. They just happened to be able to get off the boat long enough for you to come back and shoot them, like in the water. Like, if that's American exceptionalism, I'm sure a lot of Americans don't want to have anything to do with that. That is disgraceful. That is fucking disgraceful. And again, it's not about whether these guys were the worst of it. We don't know. These could have been tourists. You know what I mean? You don't know who was in the water. We don't know. We don't know their names. We don't know what drugs they were running. If they were running drugs at all. Maybe they were just out joyriding in a speedboat. You know what I mean? A naval deck gun, like if you see a warship and you're on a speedboat or whatever and you're going, you might not, how do you know they're drug runners? You have to stop them to know. You have to, catch the speedboat. And, you got the technology. You can follow these guys right to the shore. Catch them at shore. Catch them here. They're not going to be able to outrun you. What are they going to, they're going to run out of gas at some point. You know what I mean? And, you can keep a drone on them until they run out of gas. You know what I mean? And maybe, okay, they were shooting at you. That's one thing. Okay, but even at that, same like World War II. Once the men are in the water, they're defenseless. You don't go and kill them off. You know what I mean? Because that's an act of war. It's a war crime to do that. Doesn't matter which nation does it. And when you're supposed to be the reigning beacon of the world of freedom and liberty and justice, that's a disgrace. And yes, Trump is guilty. That ship commander is guilty. The guy who pulled you can refuse unlawful orders. But my job, yeah, fuck your job. At some point, we need some bravery in these fucking law enforcement and military guys, or else this chaos is going to keep going. You know what I mean? Do your fucking job. Say, look, I swore an oath to the Constitution, and look, under the Geneva Convention, I can't shoot these guys. What? Nobody has the courage to say no? Is the U.S. Navy that coward? Really? You can't just say, no, I'm not going to shoot these guys. Well, you'll be court-martialed. Fucking court-martial me. Yeah, I'm not shooting innocent men in the water that are defenseless. We'll arrest them. At that point, I think there should have been a mutiny on the ship to the captain saying, no, we're going to arrest these guys. You're going in the brig too. But no, nobody has any courage, right? Anyway, we'll wait and see what happens with Venezuela. We'll wait to see who else follows suit. We'll wait to see if there's an actual boots on the ground. That will be so disastrous. Look, Maduro's out there saying, look, we don't want to fight with the United States. Please don't attack us. Please don't attack us. Right? I'm not saying Maduro's the good guy, but he's saying, don't do it. Don't do it. Now, he's like the Iranians maybe? He's saying, don't do it because there'll be consequences. But he's also said, look, Venezuelans are ready to fight. They're ready to defend their country. And I believe him, And I believe any American that's going to get captured, either getting shot down, you say, well, the Venezuelans are nothing burger. They can't shoot us down. Afghanis were shooting down fucking U.S. planes. Not very many of them, but if the Afghanis could do it, Venezuela is way above the fucking Afghanis, right? They do have air defense systems. Yes, they're older, but these older air defenses, such as the SA-11s, for example, I think they have those. If they have SA-11s, well, they could shoot down stealth aircraft with those. Maybe not optimally, but they have the ability. So we'll see what happens. Again, anybody that's thinking 51st state up here in Canada, this is what you would be joining on to, is a dying empire. The United States has to balance its budget. It is way, way over budget. Canada's over our budget by $76 billion. That's peanuts in comparison to the Americans, right? And that's if we use up all the budget, right? Maybe we get lucky and Carney, over budgeted on purpose so that when he goes over budget, that it looks like he didn't go over budget. I'm hoping that's what he done. If he's smart, he would have done that. But, chances are it will be like $150 billion over budget or something like that. And then, but I think Carney's crafty enough, not because he's a good guy, but just he's sneaky enough. He knows, no matter what, we're going to come in under $78 billion. Let's say it goes over budget $46 billion. Okay? And then he can sit there and say to the conservatives, say, look, you got nothing on me. I came in under budget. Because our plan is working, blah, blah, blah. But, again, it's I don't trust any of these people. But Carney is stepping Canada in the right direction by making partnerships with everybody. And it's daily now. It's daily now. The things that, Carney's not going to get 90 deals in 90 days like Trump said, but he's trying. He's trying. And it's going to take, 5-10 years before we see the fruits and labors of what Carney's doing today. But the thing is everybody's pivoting away from the United States. The United States is now, because Trump has said that we don't need anything from Canada, Canada's a nothing burger, it's not even a real country. That border, well, even though I campaigned on strong borders, the Canadian border is kind of arbitrary. I think that's mostly our territory. And what are they doing with our resources up there? This is exactly what Trump is saying, right? So everybody around the world is like, well, and we might be able to buy something cheaper from the United States than Canada, but at least with Canada, it's not volatile. And once these trades, like the corn deal that just the American farmers just lost out on, went to us, because it's like, well, we know if we make a deal with the Canadians, we don't have to worry about the Canadians, threatening to annex us or anything like that. I mean, Canada is probably the only country in the world that has been threatened by, say, like Turks and Caicos to Canada, you must annex us. Like Turks and Caicos has been begging us to annex them, which I don't want to annex Turks and Caicos. Sure, it's a cozy little island, whatever, but it's like I don't want to take on their debt and their problems either, and their immigration, right? But the thing is even Iceland at one point wanted to use the Canadian dollar. Why? Because they trust us. That's why. And Canada said, no, we're not going to annex you. Thanks for asking. We appreciate that. If we ever get into annexation mode, maybe someday we'll do this, right? Yeah, Iceland, no, look, hold out. Your currency's not that bad. We appreciate that you want to use our currency. We love you for that. Thank you very much. Greenland, okay, yes, we've had a war since the 1950s between you guys over that island. The Whiskey War, yeah, the best war that's ever existed in human history. And this is another reason I hate Trudeau. He ended that war. It was the funnest war ever. The Greenlanders would show up at the island, pull our flag out, put a bottle of their best whiskey there. We'd come back, pull their flag out, put our flag, and put the best bottle of whiskey there. And we do this about twice a year or something like that, And it's just like, no, we're gonna have a truce. Fuck no. Greenland, we need to go back to that war. That was the best war ever. Those are the type of wars that should exist on the planet. The friendship wars. Not killing people. But anyway, I digress. So I want to keep an eye on Argentina. I want to keep obviously, an eye on what they're going to do in Venezuela. Obviously, the Israelis are not ready for another strike on Iran yet. The Russians are winning in the Ukraine, whether you like that or not. They're advancing. And again, there's really not much the Ukrainians can do. I don't know how, the Ukrainians have not been able to outplay the Russians. They're getting in a lot of good shots, and it's costing the Russians a lot. But no, the Russians aren't running out of men. No, their economy's not collapsing. The Russian economy's never been great to begin with. Yes, the Russians are increasing their warhammer, their manufacturing. Yeah. So there's a lot going on. The United States is in a very desperate situation right now. Most people are not aware of just how bad things are about to get. If you thought it was bad now, if you thought 2020 was bad, what is about to happen and is happening, we're going to hit a quickening. We're going to go from, since I've been saying from 2010, look, everybody thought the economy was going to recollapse again the world economy was going to collapse again in 2012. We hit because they were basing it on the 1929-1933 model, right? Didn't happen. I myself thought, okay, yeah, Peter Schiff and all those guys, yeah, we're going to, look, 2008 was the speed bump, and when we hit the real crash, it's going to be in about 2012 if you go by the standards of the time, and it's going to be about 400 times worse, okay? Well, they've kicked the can down the road. After 2012, I'm like, I think Gregory Mannarino summed it up. He goes, look, the Federal Reserve is going to come up with things we haven't even dreamed of to kick the can down the road. And we got modern monetary policy at it, which is just print. It's like, okay, let's take Keynesian economics, which, okay, you're supposed to stimulate the economy and then do austerity to get back to a balanced budget. But what modern monetary system is basically just use fractional reserve, which we've got to get rid of fractional reserve. We'll stimulate the economy with printing money, but we won't do any austerity. And in fact, we'll increase the government. Now look, Stephen Harper balanced the budget in the 11th hour, so to speak, and handed a balanced budget to Justin Trudeau, which was a very smart thing for him to do. But he also did it while he was expanding the government. That was the bizarre part, because he knew where to make the cuts. Now, Carney is playing that game, the Stephen Harper game there. It's just, will he be successful? Now, if Carney is half successful on just one proposal, he could probably balance the Canadian budget within 4 years. It's a possibility while expanding the government. But if he's shrinking the government, even if it's 40,000 government workers a year, which is barely a drop in the bucket, it depends which 40,000, right? So let's say he does that. He shrinks the government through just basically people retiring and not replacing them and then, shuffling people around, whatever. That's one way to do it. The other way he's going to do it, that he's proposed, or not proposed, but is kind of said, look, every government, a federal government department in Canada has to come up with 15% savings in the next 4 years, so much per year. Every department. Maybe that alone might wrangle the operation costs. If we get back to a balanced budget, okay, it's not crisis averted. It means we're getting set up to sort of deal with the massive crisis that we're in. But a lot of things have to happen. And I think Carney understands this to the degree where, okay, he's got to pander to the left, but he's got to get rid of the crazy radical left. And so far, he's purged his cabinet twice. Mostly just exiling these people off into other positions outside the government. But he's already started with a smaller caucus than what Justin Trudeau did. He already got rid of the really radicals because he knows he can't, it just won't fly anymore. So no, Carney is not like Trudeau. He has not acted like Trudeau. Yes, there's some overlaps where he has to pander to the base. He says all things to all people. Carney is a lot like Barack Obama. Whoever he's standing in front of, he sells you the snake oil. Trump panders specifically to his base and not outside his base. I mean, you had Trump out there the other day calling Ilhan Omar and Smalley's shit human beings, basically. Not so direct, but saying, look, these people don't belong here. They're raising the crime. They're turning Dearborn, Michigan into fucking Somalia. We got to send them out. It was nice to hear Trump say that. It really was, because it's he's not wrong, but it's not very diplomatic to be saying it like that. Now, Danielle Smith, on the other hand, talking about Alberta not going along with the gun buyback, and I believe Saskatchewan's going to follow suit. Hopefully, Manitoba. It's hard to say because Manitoba is run by the NDP, which is on the socialist left, right? But maybe Wab Kinew might say, okay, yes, we got to wrangle the crime, the border crime. Maybe the gun grab isn't the way to go. That's really comes down to the George Soros funded Coalition for Gun Control and stuff like that. But we're seeing not wins on that front. Carney has kicked that can down to 2026. Just how far into 2026? And provinces are saying no. If you're going to take legal property from legal property owners, i.e., guns, you're going to have to pay full market value for those things. So that's going to cost the federal government an extra $5 billion. Okay, you just gave $240 million extra dollars for weapons and stuff to Ukraine, which we couldn't afford. Now you're going to waste another $5 billion. It's one of those hot button issues that Carney can easily walk away from. He's already fired the minister that was in charge of it, and I think what he's probably going to do is replace it with a minister that's going to be here's the deal: pander to the base, but we're going to kick the can down the road for the next 4 years. Why? Because it's just a lose-lose situation for everybody. No, it doesn't solve the crime issue. No, it will not stop violence against women. No, it doesn't deal with the illegal guns and gangs. Legal, take that money that you're wasting on these gun control laws, put it on border security, put it on, basically anybody caught smuggling guns into Canada should face the death penalty. Illegal guns coming into Canada, you should face the death penalty. We need to bring back the death penalty for so many things. It won't solve all the problems, but it takes care of the reoccurring problems, meaning the people that, run drugs across the border. Okay, this is their 18th time they got caught, right? People are starting to look at that now, where it's how come all these guys that are burning white women, all these black guys that are burning white women to death and stabbing them on the trains and stuff, and all these attacks are from guys that have been arrested 50 times, like the guy that lit the lady on fire, got arrested 50 times, and some activist drug judge has let them go. Why is that judge not held to account? Maybe there is the judge says, look, I wanted to give him to it, but because of this new law, I can't do that. It's not my fault. It's the law's fault. Brian Lilly. This is one reason why I really like Brian Lilly. Brian Lilly. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's good on. He's probably 95% on everything. You know, the guy really crosses his T's, dot his I's. He'd be like the Canadian version of what Ben Swan was. Really just facts based. Here we go. And talking about like the Castle Doctrine in Canada, it does exist to a degree in our Constitution, the right to self-defense. Everybody has it. It's an inalienable right. It's toted much differently in the Second Amendment in the States, right, which pertains to the the firearms angle of it, right? Where in Canada, yes, you have the right to use a firearm in self-defense. The problem is you'll be prosecuted every time because what they're not told, what the police are not told, is that hey, you must arrest these people and let the courts decide, rather than saying, okay, well, how about we take down the statement, we investigate it, and then decide whether we're going to arrest the person or not if they were in violation of the Article 33, Article 34 of the Criminal Code, which pertains to protection of property, protection of life, right? Because our duty is always to retreat, and not escalate. But I'm thinking we're in a violent enough situation that Castle Doctrine needs to be brought back in. But anyway, that's another video for another time. But yeah, so anyway, I think I said everything I need to say on Venezuela. Again, it will be a disaster. I'm going to do more research on the Venezuelan military and what they have. I've looked at it before, but I think they're a lot more modern than I thought. I don't think they're at the level of Brazil, but they do have Su-30s, which those suckers can fire anti-shipping missiles, and they are a rival to the F-15. They can climb with an F-15, they can outmaneuver an F-15, and they can carry probably even more weapons loads and have longer ranges than the F-15, and they're as fast as an F-15 with very, very powerful radars. The Su-30 is a very, very modern and capable airplane. It's one of the best Russia has to offer. Now, the thing is how old are these Su-30s? If these are the, Block M1 series of the Su-30s, that's one thing. I believe they got these in the 2010s, so I don't think they're like from the 1980s, right? So, or 1990s. They didn't exist in the 1980s, but in the 1990s. So I don't think they're that old. If they are that old, they're not going to be much more potent than an Su-27. But that said, I don't know how many aircraft the Venezuelans have and what missiles they have access to. Even if they don't have a large stockpile, they only have to take out 14 warships, only. Yes, the Americans have a lot of advantages there, but the problem is what does, cruise missiles, 140 cruise missiles look like attacking a naval blockade? It looks like a lot of ships on the bottom of the ocean. You could lose probably about 10,000 to 15,000 men in one afternoon, which the United States would not be able to. The outrage, the assassinations that are going to take place after the attack of Venezuela, you have to understand, Venezuelans are going to kill the Trump administration people if you go to war with them. I can't see how it plays out any other way. Why? Because the third world nations, which used to only fight back in their nation, have now moved to a position where it's like, look, they're going to kill us anyway, right? The Americans are going to kill us anyway usually because Israel said so. Just fight back. Look, the Syrians were told by the Russians that, look, you want to shoot down Israeli airplanes, go ahead, but the Russians are not going to defend you against the retaliation of that, right? And that's exactly what the Israelis wanted, so that they could just go ahead and bomb everything, right? But instead, what the Israelis did with the Americans is basically armed ISIS, called them Free Syrian Army. Now, the Al Qaeda guys and Al Nusra Front and all that, they all just, these are the moderate rebels, right? And now you got an Al Qaeda leader basically running Syria because they were able to be successful at overthrowing Assad. Turkey had a hand in this as well. But the thing is that the Syrians, they would shoot down the attacks from the Israelis, such as cruise missiles and stuff like that, and they had probably about a 50 to 80% success rate with Panzer S-1s of shooting down Israeli cruise missiles and U.S. cruise missiles or whoever. The Syrians were capable of doing this. So my hunch is that the Venezuelans will probably have about a similar success rate. If you look at the Ukraine, between the Russians probably shoot down probably 80% or so of the Ukrainian stuff. The Ukrainians shoot down probably about 50 to 80% of what the Russians lob at them, right? Cruise missiles wise, drones, cruise missiles, whatever. So I'm assuming that air defenses are, going to be even slightly outdated. Air defenses are probably going to have roughly the same hit ratio. It's just how many air defenses does Venezuela have? If they have 100, the U.S. Air Force is in for a surprise because they will not have dealt with SAM sites like that since Vietnam. And Vietnam, the SAM sites weren't that good. Like if you have an SA-11 on the ground, even if it's Gen 1 SA-11, that is a hard SAM site to get away from. Next to the AAA and the flak guns, like F-16s are not going to be able to get close. The F-35s, the low frequency radar, the Venezuelans probably, like the Iranians, can pick these things up no problem and track them. And again, it's detecting stealth is not that hard. Almost every Air Force can do it. Almost every ground radar can do it. It's the hard part is locking onto it and shooting it down. But that said, if you could triangulate, you can get your missiles in the area. Once a missile gets within a certain range, it doesn't matter what the aircraft is. Even a B-2 would get detected and shot down. Look, the Iranians made it very clear. They could have shot down all 7 of the B-2s. They were tracking them. What they were doing was they didn't want to escalate. So they said, well, we'll let the Americans hit us, but then we'll give them a symbolic hit on one of their air bases. We'll fire the slowest missiles we have so they can shoot them all down over another country. I think it was the Jordan or the UAE. They fired on that base, and they let the Jordanians know, or whatever, the UAE, whoever it was, I can't remember what it was, earlier this year in retaliation. And the 12-day war that Iran kind of won. You know what I mean? If you look at it, like, it was very lopsided how that war was going to go. Like, you weren't going to fight another 12 days or there'd be no Israel left. Like, I mean, they really got freaking hammered. But nobody expected the Iranians to hit back. But the Iranians figured out that we have to make a statement. You hit us, we hit you back 10 times, even if you're a bigger opponent, because the populace will not put up with that. When the Iranians start sinking U.S. warships, which they have more than the capabilities to do, and think of all this time that's went by since the Iranians been attacked, I'm sure they're geared up for round 2 big time, right? Another, like the U.S. Navy are sitting ducks out there in the Gulf of Aden or the Arabian, or the Strait of Hormuz. Like, look, the Houthi, you can't stop the Houthis. U.S. airstrikes against the Houthis have done absolutely nothing. You've hit a couple of buildings and maybe the odd, launcher or whatever, but like, no, the Houthis, they're out there hitting ships left, right, and center. Right now, what it is it's the Ukrainians, trying to sink ships off the coast of Spain and shit that are like Russian ghost fleets. And what the Russian ghost fleets seem to be doing is basically using freighters or whatever to go and cut like communication lines and all that stuff, right, under the sea. So it is getting dangerous out there. But the Venezuelans, again, what makes them so dangerous is that if they have anti-shipping missiles, which I'm supposing they do, even if older, it could be just the numbers game of it. That, okay, well, we're going to send out 200 drones while we send out 100 or 200 speedboats. Okay, while we fire, say, 100 and 10 cruise missiles at every ship. Plus, if we got some Iskanders, use those to finish off each ship. One of those things hits a ship, even an aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier might not be completely destroyed, but it will be crippled. You will not be launching anything off that aircraft carrier. the aircraft carrier will be fighting fire for the next 2 days if it doesn't sink. You know what I mean? Now that said, we have to look at what do I think the Venezuela has like 2 or 3 probably Kylo class subs. I know Chile has some of them, but Chile has also they're 90s Scorpion subs. Now, if the Venezuelans and the Chileans work together, I don't think the Chileans would join in on it. But maybe the Venezuelans might have some sort of a deal mate struck there where they can use these subs, which could sink one of these things could sink an entire carrier fleet with a really good submarine captain. Those French torpedo 2000s are impossible to stop. They're basically an upgraded version of the Mark 48, and if they've got the French Exocet, torpedo cruise missiles, good luck stopping those. If they have the F-21 torpedoes, if they're firing those things, there's one of those can kill a U.S. aircraft carrier. Just one of them well placed. 4 for sure. 6, absolutely. The Russian torpedoes, they're heavy torpedoes, which is most likely what the Venezuelans would have, might be a little bit easier to get away from. But if you're trying to fight cruise missiles and drones and speedboats and other Navy warships and aircraft at the exact same time, with all this other stuff being launched at you, while the submarines coordinate the attack, and if they've got 2 submarines, that means they could fire with Kylos. They could probably fire 12 torpedoes at once, which 1 torpedo per ship. Maybe they sink 4 ships right away, and on the second round they sink another 4. Or cripple them so bad that they get the U.S. The rest of the U.S. Navy or Air Force will not be able to come to the defense of the fleet. It will be absolutely disastrous. And that we don't know. That's the worst case scenario. And then try landing people on that beach that's heavily protected. If the Venezuelans are smart, they'll do just a complete ambush. It's like, okay, let the Americans come on. And I do believe some Navy SEALs, again, this is on the grapevine, so take it with a grain of salt, have already been intercepted in Venezuela. I don't know if they've been killed. Obviously, the government wouldn't admit to this. But you're going to have to get, secret teams sneaking in to do the sabotage and all that and track targets for the U.S. Air Force in the jungle, right? You're going to have to send boots on the ground to do this. Now, how do you do this with guerrilla warfare and, Venezuelan military all over the place? Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Because if you are captured, you are going to die very horrible deaths in either Venezuelan prisons at best, or they're going to kill you, torture you, get information. They're going to be getting information from whichever U.S. soldiers they get, because they're going to want to know how they're going to be attacked, right? So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Again, guys, you have to understand our governments are pure evil pretty much everywhere around the world. And they are fighting like mob bosses. So maybe you're the biggest Trump proponent. You shouldn't be, because you got to look at what the man does, not just what he says. Some of the stuff he says is pretty comical, been entertaining, whatever. And a lot of times Trump tells you what you want to hear. But you got to look at what he's doing. He's starting another war on behalf of his stakeholder capitalists, right? Doesn't mean you say, oh, well, if you're against capitalism, then you're for communism. No, communism was shit. It doesn't work on paper. It doesn't work in real life. But capitalism has a problem with debt, right? It's the death and debt-based model that addicts everybody to money printing, right? Cheap stuff for the lowest bidder for everyday low prices, which leads to everyday low wages. That once you understand that, then you understand why everybody's becoming unemployed or working class poor, is because it's pay me now, pay me later. You can't spend your way out of debt. It's as simple as that. It's not the Austrian economic model of capitalism that's out there, which will not fulfill all market needs. Look, there's no money to really be made in the medical system helping people. Treating people, sure, that's what the medical systems do. Is they just want to keep people sick so they can keep giving them medication till they die, right? Make money off them. There's no interest in our pharmaceutical companies to cure anybody, right? Because they don't make money that way. That's why you can't have a capitalist medical system. You have to be able to live within a means of a system that's actually designed to help people, not just find ways to, give them die with dignity and doctor assisted suicide. You can't do that. That's what happens in a capitalist society. You have to have a nationalist government that's willing to protect the people, but you have to understand you can't have a medical system that's out there solely for everybody. Like all illegals. No, illegals and foreigners should pay out of pocket for your medical systems. The idea is to encourage them to go home so they're not straining our medical systems, right? But anyway, another topic for another time. I gotta leave it at that. I got stuff to do. It's getting kind of cool in here. Temperature is dropping a bit, so I gotta probably put the temperature up just a little bit more. Anyway, there we go.